Good morning again, sophomores. Today we're starting our next unit, the second unit this year, and this unit is on integers. You don't have to write down all of this, but please go ahead on the left side of your paper, write down integers in real life, and on the right side, write down this definition. An integer is a positive or negative whole number. That vocabulary is going to be really important. You're going to hear it a lot today. Positive or negative whole number. Okay? We're going to start learning about negatives. The biggest thing about negatives that students sometimes struggle with is they just aren't sure why you'd ever use a negative. How does having a negative number make sense? Well, here I made a quick list for you of some of the ways that you might use negatives. You don't need to write this down. It's just something for you to have in your head. Negatives can mean things like less than zero, going down, losing, or owing, especially when it comes to money. Opposite, positives can mean something that's going up, something that's greater than zero, something that's gaining, or having money. We're going to see lots and lots of examples today, so if you're not sure how some of these might work, I promise you're going to see an example of all of these. Let's look at a couple of those together. The first one is I want to do the opposite of 4. Anytime a number doesn't have a sign in front of it, I assume it's positive. So this is positive 4. I don't have to write the plus sign, but for today it's helpful. Okay, I want to know what the opposite of 4 is. To do this, I'm going to use a number line. We're going to talk a lot about number lines later this week, but I know you've at least seen them before in 4th and 5th grade. In the middle of a number line is usually 0. Hopefully you learned a long time ago that in order to place 4, I just go to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? The way that I see an opposite is by seeing how many it is to get from 4 to 0. So I'm going to change colors here, and I'm going to count from 4 to 0. 1, 2, 3, 4 places, right? It takes 4 places to get from 4 to 0. That makes sense. In order to see the opposite, I would go the other direction. So I would go 1, 2, 3, 4 the other direction. And it would be this number right here. What is this number? Well, like I said, we'll talk more about this later, but you can see on the giant number line on the wall that my numbers look the opposite on the other side. So this would be -1, -2, -3, and -4. So the opposite of 4 is -4. Write this down in your notes, please. Opposite of 4 is -4. Okay, let's look at another couple quick examples. Here are some real-life examples that you might see in just the world around you. The first one is 5 feet below sea level. Please, in your notes, write this down. Below sea level, opposite, and sea level. And we're going to draw a picture to show those. Sea level is something that you might have heard living in New Orleans, especially around hurricane season. Sea level is generally where the sea meets the land. That's just the regular elevation of most places. So I'm going to draw a line here, and I'm just going to draw the sea. This is water. I know I'm not a very good artist, but there you go. There's some water. If I'm going 5 feet below sea level, obviously that means I'm going down below the water, right? And I'm going 5 feet down. Do you think if this is 5 feet down, is that positive or negative? Well, quickly, if I flip back to my little list I had here, negatives can mean going down or less than 0. For this case, with the sea level, this makes sense since I'm going down below the water, that this would be -5. So below sea level, next to it, I want you to write negative. How about the opposite? Well, the opposite of -5, what do you think the opposite of -5 would be? You might have guessed from that first example that the opposite of -5 would be +5, and that would be going up above the water. What do you think I would call this, though? If -5 was 5 feet below sea level, +5 is 5 feet above sea level. It's important to use correct vocabulary with these real-world examples. That's why we're going to do as many examples as possible. Okay, so for the opposite, I want you to write positive. And last, I want to talk about what number would I call exactly sea level? Based on what you know about your number line and what you think about these two numbers, What number do you think sea level is represented by? Sea level in this case is 0. In every real life example, there's always a positive and an opposite that's negative, but there's always a 0. There's always something that's in the middle of those two things. Today we're going to talk both about positives and negatives, their opposites, and what does 0 mean. Okay, we're going to look one more example here. It says a football team gains 10 yards on a play. How would I represent this as an integer? On the next play, they lose 10 yards. How would I represent that? Again, you don't have to write this, but I do want you to draw my diagram. Okay, so I've got a football team and they're lining up. Let's say they're lining up on this line. In football, this is called the line of scrimmage. I tell you that not because I think you need to know about sports, but sometimes you hear real life examples like that in math class, and you need to know what they're talking about. So they toss the football and they start this play and they gain 10 yards. So let's say their goal is over here, right? They gain 10 yards. They go this way 10 yards. Do you think that that is positive or negative? Hopefully you saw that if they're gaining, it makes most sense that this would be positive 10. Okay? On the next play, they start again. But this time, instead of gaining 10 yards, they lose 10 yards. So they have to go back this way 10 yards. What integer do you think this is represented by? Remember, an integer is a positive or negative whole number. The integer that best represents this would be negative 10 because they lost 10 yards. Remember I told you this line could be called the line of scrimmage. This is where they started. What integer do you think this represents? Hopefully you realize that this line represents 0. I told you in every real life situation, there's a positive, a negative, and a 0. The last thing I want to mention is that when you see negatives, a lot of times it's going to be about money. So it's important today to focus on some of the vocabulary involved with money. We're going to talk specifically about that vocabulary when we start our guided practice. So at this point, please close your computers and look forward.